All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What up, horror heads, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa.
And we are joined this week for the second time by one Nick Hardy. Nick, how are you, man?
I'm doing outstanding.
Glad to hear it. We have been we took a week off. I had a little vacation. Went down, saw some family in Florida. Had a little pool time, a little 4th of July barbecue. You know, all of that good stuff. And now we are back with Summer Fan Fest. And what we've been doing, if you're just tuning in, is we've been letting people pick for us. But the caveat is they've got to come on the episode. And actually, it was Nick. I don't even know if I've ever told you this, Nick. But it was when Nick suggested that he wanted us to do Child's Play and asked to be on the episode that I even came up with the idea for Summer Fan Fest. So we are doing Child's Play tonight, and this was Nick's choice. And Nick, what made you pick this one?
So this was actually the very first horror movie that I remember seeing.
Oh, nice.
And I looked, it came out in 88. So I had to have been 4 years old when I watched this movie. And I swear it scarred me for life, because when I just watched it again, I was regretting it, one. And then two, the very opening scene, whenever he first goes into the toy store and all those dolls are sitting up there, my skin just crawled. Just terrible.
Man, this movie did such a good job of creating such an out of the box icon. Like, you know, and we're going to get into everything, but rewatching this movie now, 34 years later, it's incredible to think that long ago, how wild it was to take this idea of possessing a child's toy and not just making it like a one-off thing, creating a villain that's like, man, you could tell from just this first one that this guy was going to have staying power.
Well, I don't know if y'all remember, but back in the 80s, there was a doll called the My Buddy doll.
My Buddy.
And
I had one.
incredibly similar to that doll. So whenever my brother had one, and after I watched this movie, every morning when I woke up, I would go and punch that doll to make sure it wasn't alive. Because I was terrified that doll was going to come to life while I was asleep and try to kill me.
Fuck you, buddy.
Yeah.
Punch.
Yeah.
There was a girl one too, Kid's sister.
Yeah. My sister had that one.
I don't know that I ever actually knew anybody that had a My Buddy. I just remember the commercials. And actually, while I was watching the movie last night, I was like singing the song from the commercials. Wherever I go, he goes, my buddy. So when we're looking at this movie, like we said, it came out in 1988. So that's late to the game when you look at when all these other iconic characters were created. And yet it was still really surprising with the things that it brought to the table. So the very first question that we've got to ask is, this long after everything, and I mean, you can consider the whole franchise if you want, or you can just look at this movie, but the question has got to be, does this one hold up as a scary movie? I'm going to start with Nick, because I think you have a very unique perspective on this.
So this was my first time watching it since I was 4 years old. So
you haven't seen it in 34 years?
No, I have not.
Oh, wow.
I love that so much.
I was terrified to rewatch the movie. So I thought it was still pretty scary, especially, you know, how creepy that freaking doll looks.
Right.
And the fact that it can come alive and apparently has the power to knock people through windows.
With a toy hammer.
Yeah, with a toy hammer. That's very terrifying to me. I think it holds up actually really well, especially for today's standards.
Dave?
I have to agree. One of the things that I I love about this movie is that kind of like Friday the 13th, it leans like really heavy into like the thriller murder mystery kind of movie, and kind of like, I mean, it's definitely got elements of a slasher there, right? But I wouldn't call it a slasher. I'd say that this is much more like a supernatural horror or a mystery horror movie. In fact, like the first time I saw this, I wasn't even sure that Chucky was the one murdering people until it's Chucky.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, oh wait, what is it fucking Andy that's killing people? Because like they're about the same size and the shoes and this and I didn't know. Maybe Andy's just fucking nuts, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I love that about this movie. And I think that it gave us so much in one movie. Like I don't think that Don Mancini had franchise in mind when he did this. I think he just wanted to write a really great movie. But I have to wonder, like, you've got Halloween, you've got Friday the 13th, and you've got Nightmare on Elm Street, all like firing at like full speed ahead by 1988.
Mm-hmm.
Is there somewhere in his mind where he's thinking, I need to establish a franchise right here? Because if there is, I mean, fucking success. Because everything you need for an amazing horror franchise is right here.
Yeah.
Yep. Take an innocent child's toy and just make it the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the My Buddy doll. The My Buddy doll came out in '85, and I mean, it'd be crazy to not think that it was the inspiration for the Good Guy doll.
Yeah,
I mean the
overalls,
yeah, like, and so it's just I love the idea of like he got up one day and like saw a commercial for this and was like, that thing's kind of hideous. Maybe it's kind of terrifying. I could do something with this, like,
yeah.
and then that's what this became, So Dave sent me the
I also love how like offensively 80s this is.
Yeah,
because like in the 80s, for the younger viewers here, you could not get a toy line into production unless you had a TV show that accompanied it.
Yeah.
And that's why we got Transformers and G.I. Joe and He-Man and Thundercats and all these great things, right? And they are great. Fuck you if you think that they're just commercials trying to sell toys. All right, they're much more than that. That might be what the intention was. All right,
really great commercials.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's like, you got that feeling here. It's like, he had the PJs and he had all. I mean, it always takes me back to my childhood. I fucking love it.
Well, I mean, and there's a full toy line associated with the Good Guys, because before he gets his doll, he just gets like the toolbox and stuff, and there's a cartoon that he's watching. So
the
like,
cereal,
cereal, like I mean, it's it's a very twisted view of all that, but it's so funny. Like Dave sent me the show notes today, and this was the first note on it, the first one. Like we usually do. Does it hold up when it's an older one? But I mean, without skip, as soon as the movie ended yesterday, like once the credits were rolling, the very first thing I said was, I will be damned if that doesn't hold up. Like this movie, while it's, without the childhood trauma that Nick has, it's not jump out of your seat scary, but it is creepy as fuck. Like it's like settle into your bones scary, right? It's not jump scare scary with a couple of like small exceptions. But yes, from the very opening scene where it's like, okay, those dolls are kind of bizarre looking, and then it's like, that sounds like voodoo, and it's just like everything is building so oddly. And then, that she buys the doll from the peddler in the alley, and it's like, this is everything about this is so creepy.
What are the chances? What are the chances that the one doll that peddler picked up was Charles Lee Ray?
They're pretty small.
Yeah, because
the whole store was kind of on fire. So maybe the rest of them were just too damaged. Although that one would have been covered in blood by how much his bloody hands were just all over that thing.
I wonder, so we're under the impression that Chucky never, like, we don't know of anything Chucky did before he came to life for Andy. But if the transfer is instantaneous, is there a possibility that he like came out of the box and like grabbed the box and then like took himself out of the burning building and like climbed back into the box?
Well, the box was open
right
at the beginning of the movie. So,
see,
but I don't know why he would want
feeling
himself to be sold to a child. So
I think it was like a survival thing where like he just kind of like ran out, and then there's all these people that are obviously going to be curious about why there's a fucking doll running around the street.
Okay,
right?
fair.
And so he just like played doll.
Okay,
and
so there we go.
and then this homeless guy comes walking around, sees a couple of boxes that might be damaged, might not be damaged, maybe the doll inside was damaged, and he's like, "Oh, I'll just take this box and I'll shove this doll in here."
Right, and
then,
I mean, why murder the homeless guy? You
I'll
can't accomplish
clean
anything from that.
I'll clean all the blood off this doll and then throw it in this box.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The others are kind of charred. They've got glass in them, and this one just has a little bit of blood.
Yeah.
See, now we're getting somewhere. But I mean, one thing that when we talk about standing up, man, one thing that holds up to this day, and I know that we're gonna kind of talk about it as things go on, but dude, the special effects, like the over the not over the top in a bad way, like the ridiculously over the top good, especially for 88, like practical effects of creating this Chucky doll are bonkers. Like this is actually the second time I've seen this one in the past year, because when the reboot came out, not like so in the all things horror, the multiple Child's Play timelines, the one that came out that was like, okay, this is just a brand new thing where they made him like AI, which if you haven't seen it, it sells the movie in a very different way that's super interesting. But after I watched that, I was like, all right, that was fine. I liked that. Now I want to go back and watch the original. So I went back and watched it. So this is the second time I've seen it in a year. But now doing this show, like that's where I was like, okay, I know what's going to happen. I'm pretty familiar with this movie. I really focused on watching all those times we just see like a hand or the facial movements, because there's that very obvious difference between when he's still a good guy doll and when he's, full blown Chucky. But just kind of watching that, man, like, you could release a Child's Play reboot that still uses that level of practical effects, and it's still going to sell. And I mean, that was proven with Cult of Chucky, Curse of Chucky, Seed of Chucky. I mean, they were still doing that same thing. And that is the one thing that was missing in that new one, is there is so much CGI because it's supposed to be so futuristic the way the new one moves. And it's like, you lose something without that, man. Like, all of that equates to a movie that, yeah, it definitely holds up. Like, this is still a fun, scary watch. Like, I would not let my children anywhere near this movie. Like we always have the conversation of like especially Dave's like, oh yeah, Link, watch this one with me. It's like, no, not this one. No, I'm not letting my kids within a mile of this movie because look at what we have here, ladies and gentlemen. This is the product of seeing this movie too. Right?
Yep. Yes. Scarred for life.
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason why there's certain like staples of 80s horror that I hope never get remade. Like An American Werewolf in London. Like, that's one of those that I think like you can't remake that because that transformation scene is going to be CGI, and that's not going to scare me anymore. It's not going to be scary, whereas seeing something transform into a werewolf on screen, like, that shit still terrifies me. All those George Romero zombie movies, where Tom Savini, the fucking goat, actually murdered people on screen. He had to at least once. At least one guy had his fucking entrails ripped out while he was alive. How else would you be that
familiar with what they look like?
Yeah, so today that's all done with fucking CG, and it doesn't land. The weight isn't there.
And I mean, in that same vein, the guy who's out there doing it the best right now, regardless of what you think of the show, is probably Greg Nicotero.
Yeah.
Doing it with Walking Dead, and he is a product of the Tom Savini school. Like he is a protege of Tom Savini. So that all just shows there was a level of craftsmanship to that. There's the one hand where it's like, I've seen CGI do some amazing things, and every time you think it's not going to get better, kind of just off topic here a little bit, but also on topic. I rewatched the first Harry Potter movie yesterday.
Oh, that's a rough watch.
Yeah, man. I was like, I'm watching and I was like I kept having to remind my kids. I was like, this was made 20 years ago.
But you know what? It did not look good 20 years ago either.
Yeah, I guess I remembered it looking better than what I got yesterday, but that's the thing. Going back and watching Child's Play just last night, I was like, this still looks incredible. And there's something about that's never going to be outdone, regardless of whether you can do it cheaper with CG or easier. It's just, it's never going to be the same.
Yeah, I agree. So let's move on into more specific areas, right? The story here, right? This is a much more complex story than we usually get in a horror movie.
Yeah.
This is why I say, like, it's often called a slasher, and definitely parts 2 and 3 leaned into the slasher craze. And then it kind of became more of a comedy series after that, and it was fantastic. And that's one of the great things about this fucking series.
Still great.
No matter what it did, it was fan-fucking-tastic at it. And that is like all praise to Don Mancini. The guy's a fucking genius. Mr. Mancini, come on our podcast, like, because you're the fucking man.
Yes.
But this is very different from your standard slasher because it's got like buckets of story, and it's kind of, like I said, a murder mystery thing going on there. We talked a little bit about that when we did Puppet Master, and Puppet Master, obviously influenced by Child's Play, right? But 2 very different movies. So,
boy, how?
Yeah. So does this complex story work, right? First and foremost, and does it still scare? Like, is it a scary story? Not that there are scary moments, but the story itself is like, that's fucking scary, or
Yeah,
Daniel.
So it's we keep saying it's slasher-esque, right? This movie is slasher adjacent at this point.
That's, I think, the best way to call it.
Because what we're looking at here is like Jason has his motivations, mainly just like, oh, teenagers let me die, so I kill teenagers, right? Like Freddy has his motivations, but they're thin, they're paper thin at best, right? Freddy's just sadistic. But what we get out of Chucky is this guy who, the people he's killing, like, there's a very specific reason for it. Like when he kills Maggie at the beginning, it's like, well, she was in his way, right? Like she was a bitch to him. So, but then it's like, yeah, he wants to kill the cop. That's the cop that was trying to catch him. It's like, yeah, he wants to kill the dude that left him, right? Like, so you're right. These are like, they're murders with a purpose, as opposed to just like some really bland vendetta. Like they're all very personal, which is strange for when we're talking about this type of movie, which I think you're right. I think it definitely sets it apart from your general slasher in the 80s. Also, what we get out of this story, you get the splintering of people who believe that Chucky is alive. And so that's constantly feeding into the story, because at first you just got Andy, and only Andy believes that he's alive. Then eventually the mom finds out. Humperdinck still thinks she's crazy, right? I'm sorry, that's all he'll ever be to me. Like, I can't. He's always going to be Prince Humperdinck. Like, but then he's like, oh shit, now she's crazy too. And then he eventually figures out, and it's like, and then his partner shows up. He's like, man, y'all are all fucking nuts, right? And so that whole thing feeding into the story too is an extra level of tension, because you're like, why would people do this to themselves? For the love of God, somebody believe them. And there's a lot of really great tension building. And for a story that has as much in it as this one does, it's paced really well. Hour 27, it all gets in there. It never felt too crammed or too spaced out. I think that this movie was a really lofty ideal in 88 for what you could kind of do with the idea of just a serial killer on the loose. And that's cool.
Yeah.
Nick?
Yeah. I am a big fan of how the movie flowed from the beginning to the end. It starts out, it doesn't, there's no delay in trying to figure something out. It jumps right into it.
Yeah.
From the beginning scene, dude gets struck by lightning, takes it like a champ somehow. And then, you think you're going to have
lightning, man.
You think you're going to have a little lull between that scene and whenever Chucky reveals himself, makes his first kill or whatever, but it's straight into it.
Yeah.
He goes straight after Maggie because she wouldn't let him watch the 9 o'clock news.
That's so great.
And to be fair, we've all been there, right?
Yeah. And then
Mom, it's the fucking 9 o'clock news. I don't care what time my bedtime is. I need to see the weather report.
And then everything that leads up throughout the story has a purpose. So even if there is a little bit of downtime where, the kid's riding on the train to get from one place to another, it's still engaging. He's still leaning over, talking to the doll. The part where she's trying to find the peddler in the homeless camp, where she's kind of talking to people and there's no dialogue.
Talk about offensively 80s. That walking the dark streets through the homeless of New York. It's like, whoo, yeah.
But it's all with a purpose, and it's all engaging, and it's for an hour and 27 minutes. It's everything is there for me. Even though I'm scarred by it, I still had a really good time watching it.
Man, I have to mimic what y'all have said, because I think that this is the perfect marriage of story and horror. Oftentimes, like you have to choose, how much story am I going to put in here because I really want to scare you. Right. And I think this is one of those instances where the story itself is so scary that you can lean into it, because this is an idea that all children have at some point in their lives. Is my toy alive? Right? What happens to my shit when I leave my room? Because I swear that I left fucking He-Man on Battle Cat. But now he's not there.
It's the opposite of Toy Story, though.
Oh my God. I just realized the kids in both of those movies are named Andy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Well, if done on purpose, well played, Pixar.
Yeah. And I think that the story itself is terrifying. This is one of those movies where the actual scenarios that the characters are put in are terrifying, and there are moments in the movie where I genuinely fear for the characters. Yeah, and I've seen this movie a handful of times, and every time I watch it, I know it's coming up now, and yet I still get the sweaty palms. I still have, my heartbeat starts to go up, because I know it's going to happen, and yet it's like, oh fuck, this is fucking crazy. This is scary. And where I think with Puppet Master, all I could think of was, well, that's fucking horse shit. With this movie, it's an almost identical concept, but with this movie, I was like, you better watch out, because Chucky's gonna fucking come and get you, and it's gonna be for real. So
don't look under the couch. Right. What are you doing?
I also love that this was done with voodoo, which isn't something that's explored an awful lot in horror movies.
Yeah.
But because whenever a religion or a system of belief is explored in a horror movie, it's usually Christianity. there's a whole bunch of possession movies, a whole bunch of demon movies where you get a priest who comes in. You never get voodoo. In fact, the only other voodoo movie I can think of is
Live and Let Die.
Well, to keep it horror, I watched Live and Let Die fairly recently, and it holds up. Not so great, but I still enjoy it. No, The Serpent and the Rainbow is one of the only other horror voodoo movies that I can think of.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's really scary. Oh, and here comes
Andy.
Andrew Harriman. Yeah. Serpent and the Rainbow. There you go. Yeah, we're on the same wavelength there, buddy. Yeah, it's fucking terrifying because anyone who subscribes to a system of belief, and I'm not a religious person, but I grew up in a religious household. And so like that shit never leaves you. You know, so when there's this like higher power that, you know, gives you that, it for a lot of people it's real. And I think that even though this is obviously supernatural, there is that bit there where it's like, well, I mean, if you believe that when you die you go to fucking heaven, why not have your soul, right? If you believe in a soul that goes somewhere, why not have it go into this fucking toy because you're using the power of fucking voodoo? Well, it's crazy.
And one thing that's really great about this, you know, we always talk about that. Really, it's a really narrow lane to ride in between explaining too much and not explaining enough. And I think that this movie really knocked it out of the park. Like they gave us just enough of this like voodoo exposition that we understand what's going on. And then they're like, but also, you know, we're a bunch of white guys. Like, what do we know? Right. Like we're taking this because it's creepy. We're going to kind of use it as a Deus Ex to get us where we need to be, but it fits. Right. And they never, you know, like even once he meets Dr. Death, you know, it's not like we get some big long winded explanation of how the voodoo worked and why it went in there, you know, like, cause that's one of the problems that Annabelle kind of had was they kept the Annabelle franchise kept rewriting how it kept retconning how the magic of whatever was inside Annabelle happened. And so with this, I mean, they were just like, look, this is how it happened. The dude said this voodoo spell, lightning struck, he's in there now. Boom. Like, and it was like,
and also you're turning human.
Yeah.
Why? Because I fucking said so. That's why.
My name is Dr. Death. You're going to question me?
I also love that Charles Lee Ray, right? Is such a fucking bastard, right? Because it's like he went to this guy who clearly is a voodoo priest for good. The guy's like, you bastardized what I taught you. I'm not going to show you how to do any of this shit. And I mean, obviously it comes back to bite him in the ass or the chest or whatever, right? But like it's even though it's a bastardization, I think of anything in voodoo. I've never studied voodoo, so I'm talking out my ass here. I like that it didn't like make a joke of it. Also, you know, because you don't want to make a joke of someone's system of belief either.
Yeah, and that you're right. That's another one. Like that's a dangerous game to play, right? Like unless you're outwardly making something that is supposed to be satirical or a parody of something, it's a real danger, especially because what I know of voodoo is the people who believe in voodoo, like those aren't the type of people you want to fuck with or piss off. like that is not a sect of people that you want upset with you. You know, because it's you know, the analogy I always go back to, right? Just because you believe fire's not hot doesn't mean it won't burn you.
Right.
whether or not you believe in this stuff, you know, like pissing off a whole lot of people who do, probably a really bad idea. And so, yeah, you're right. Like because it would have been real easy for it to be some like stereotypical, you know, borderline racist thing where like a guy had like a bone in his nose and
it's Baron Samedi.
Become Baron Samedi. You know, it would have been real easy for him to show up. The dude just got like a big like cauldron in his living room or some shit like that. But they get there and the guy is like offended that this is how he chose to use his teachings.
Yeah.
And that's a crucial story element that is, again, not spoon-fed to us. It's just presented in a way where you just kind of you take it in, and it just makes the story work that much better.
So there's something else about this movie, and maybe this is the English teacher in me reading way too much into it, right?
I like when this happens.
So rein me in if you think that I've just fucking lost it.
Dude, last time Nick was on the show, I went on a 20-minute rant about character archetypes. I think we're all right.
So Child's Play is like famously covered all sorts of topics about sexuality and gender identity and all these things, right?
Yeah, Chucky gets real horny later on in the series.
He does. And when you get to Seed of Chucky and you have Glenn or Glenda, whichever child it is at that point, obviously there's something to be said here, right? So Don Mancini, who is gay, has said that he never wrote this movie to comment on sexuality, but go with me here.
I'm ready.
A guy has to transfer himself into another body that is not his and is like completely foreign to him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it possible that this movie is also commenting on sexuality and gender identity as well? I think that's a really interesting way to look at the movie, considering at the time I would have never thought this.
Right.
But when you see where the series goes,
well, he does the voodoo doctor, Dr. Death, does say you transfer yourself into the first person you reveal yourself to. So that doesn't necessarily have to be a man or a woman.
Right.
So I kind of see where you're going with that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting about a really interesting way to view gender, particularly where it's like, can you be fluid in that you can be this or that or anything, because you are still you inside the body of whoever or whatever you're in. Right?
That's okay. Look, regardless of whether or not that is actually the intention or just kind of what happens, right now, the concept of Chucky as a queer icon is one of the greatest things I ever could have imagined. Right? Like
that's what I'm saying. Like, is Chucky queer? And like is can we stand Chucky for this?
I don't know. It was pretty strange that he was happy to be inside a 6-year-old boy.
He did get really hyped about that.
Yeah.
But also I would guess, like, as a serial killer, right? Like if your thing is you're a serial killer and it's like, well, great, now I'm going to be 6 again. That's a whole lifetime of killing ahead of me.
See, that's how I took it. I took it as like I have whatever it was at the time, 30, 40 years of serial killer experience now, right? And it's kind of like what I know about like money and investment and work now. Like, if I could go back to 18 years old, like, fuck, I'd be fucking amazing,
There was a Twilight Zone about that one time, but inside it was still old.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of what I figured that was. That was like, hey, I can use all this experience and start fresh.
Right.
Yeah. And then the way he says it too, he says, I get to be 6 again or something along those lines. So, yeah.
But yeah, this is like, but man, I'm telling you, like, what I like in the event that I were ever to like, okay, in Tuscaloosa, obviously we don't have large pride celebrations here, But in the event that I were to go to
You
one,
don't
like,
really in Alabama?
yeah, go figure, right? But in the event that I were to go to a Pride celebration, it's like I feel I want to dress like Chucky and like carry around this commentary with me.
Yeah.
Be like, what's that about? Be like, well, let me tell you what we have decided how Chucky is a comment on gender identity. So obviously, you know, this movie, Child's Play, it focuses on Chucky and the people whose lives he influences, you know, all for the worst. But there are plenty of other characters here who do a lot to sell this movie. And again, you know, just I guess it's not even breaking fourth wall, right? We're a podcast. We're talking to the listeners. But the show note title for this section, and it's fantastic, is Andy Humperdinck and Seventh Heaven, which is just spectacular. So when you're looking at a story that's as well written as this and packs as much in there, you've got to put a lot of the onus of selling that story on your characters and your actors. And so what we get here is a stellar cast who all play their roles just kind of amazingly. And so when you're looking at this just really awesome story and you're looking at these people who it's revolves around outside of Chucky, when we're just looking at, you know, maybe the others, who stands out for you, Nick, as a character that just stole the show?
Well, I mean, obviously Andy as a freaking child was a very outstanding actor for that. I don't think at 6 years old I could have been a child actor. There ain't no way.
No.
I couldn't be a child actor today.
Yeah.
You got the height requirement though.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And he did a really good job. I think Karen Barclay, Catherine Hicks, she did a great job as the mom, just carrying the story, just being there, like the chemistry between her and her son was really good, I thought, on screen. The officer who's just like, "You're a crazy lady," and then drives off and then gets attacked by Chucky, you know. that whole acting scene was pretty good. I like that. Thought they were pretty. Those are the three characters that really stood out to me in the whole scheme of the movie.
Dave?
Yeah, I gotta say for me, the standout is really Alex Vincent as Andy Barclay. He is so good at being innocent, but also at like genuinely innocent, but also knowing exactly what the predicament is that he's in. Because there's that moment in the interrogation room where he looks at Chucky and he says, "Say something, they're going to take me away."
Right.
Yeah.
And he gets so upset that like he's been there for Chucky, right? Because he's his friend to the end.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, you know, "You fucking bastard. Like, I've been there for you. I've never questioned what it is that you're doing. And
I rode the L train for 2 hours for you."
Yeah. What the fuck? Yeah. I took a piss with some crackhead out in that alley.
Yeah. That emotional shift too, where he gets angry and starts punching the doll, is really good.
It's great.
Yeah.
And there is one moment that I've seen this movie twice now as a parent. There is a moment that like actually chokes me up in this movie, and it's when he's locked up and he's asking for the psychologist to come and help him, and he's like begging, he's like, don't leave me, and he's crying. I fucking welled up when both times that I've seen this since becoming a dad. It's like, fuck, man, like that might as well be my son.
Yeah,
that was very legit.
Yeah,
the genuine emotion of when he's like begging for them to save his life, like reaching out through the grate in that door. That was just like I like on my notes, like I just wrote acting in hospital, like to make sure that I talked about it, because it was just. And then I mean, even when that progresses and he's like running away, and then they're in there with like the surgeon and stuff like that, and he's watching the dude get fried by the electroshock helmet and stuff like that. He does so great. There's also something to be said about Andy, which is just, man, kids in the 80s were just built different, man. Like this kid, like just straight up just leaves his daycare, jumps on the L train, goes to a horrible part of town. And just, he's like, hey, I got a tinkle. And just like walks over behind like a dilapidated building. And it's like the kid was just like, until that moment when he realized Chucky was going to kill him, like there was, he wasn't afraid of Chucky, even though he knew Chucky killed Maggie and told them. But it wasn't, he didn't tell them because he was afraid he was next. He just told him because he's a 6-year-old and, somebody died and he knew why. Like there's, man, and that's the thing. Like it's an 80s movie kids trope, right? Like, Goonies, right? They're all preteens and teenagers and, they go on an incredible adventure and stuff like that. But it's just like, I think that because that was so prevalent in the 80s is why now we're, more likely to get these stories of children being really vulnerable and stuff like that. But he really sold that idea of like the 80s street tough kid for a kid who obviously had a decently cushy life.
I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was definitely not bad. Mom provided a nice apartment for him, seemed to go to a fairly good school, although the security is obviously very lax.
Also, but apparently once your mom drops you off, they just look the other way.
I also love that moment where Chucky looks at him from behind the grate of the fireplace, and like he's still trying to fuck with him. He's like, but Andy, I'm your friend to the end. And Andy's balls have dropped. And he's like, this is the end, friend. I always go, fuck yeah. It's such a fantastic moment. And then he just fucking lights him on fire. Right. Which, by the way,
also 80s toys, they did not care if they were flame retardant.
No, not that's what I was gonna say. Chucky obviously bathes in kerosene because like he went up like a fucking Christmas tree, man.
Yes. Chucky was a walking, talking tinderbox, apparently.
There is another actor that stood out to me, and it was at the very beginning of the movie, and it was the Mr. Criswell actor. What a dick of a boss, dude.
Such a jagweed. That guy always plays a jagweed.
He did it so well.
And
What's
there's
the name of that actor.
There's
Alan Wilder.
The one time I'll refer to him by his real name, Chris Sarandon as the detective.
So good.
He really is. Like I said, I joke and say, he'll always be Prince Humperdinck, and he will. But
he'll also always be Jerry Dandridge.
Yes, exactly. Like, yes, there are other things, but he did such a great job in this, where he and I think wasn't he the talking voice but not the singing voice for Jack Skellington?
He was, yeah.
But it was Tim Burton did the singing for Jack Skellington, correct?
Not Tim Burton.
Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
Anyway, but he did such a great job in this as just like that. Just the facts, ma'am, like type detective, right? Like he didn't give a shit that Andy was 6. That it was his birthday, he was just like, "Hey, someone's murdered. There's tiny footprints. Your son's a suspect." It's like, I just got home, and he immediately, like even when she shows up flustered and she's seen the doll come to life now and she's got all this new information, still not a fuck given, just like, okay, well now crazy runs in your family. I'm happy we institutionalized your child, it's just like, but then once he does make the transition, he's still a dick. Like when the other guy shows up and doesn't believe him, like he's still like, because then he turns and chokes him out. He's like, well, do you believe me now? And not even like a snarky, like sarcastic way. Like it was so like matter of fact and business the way he said it. He really does a great job in this, showing an evolution of his character without changing kind of who the character is. Like it actually shows growth and not just a change like a ridiculous fundamental change. It just shows the idea that, oh, okay, well, once presented with the right set of facts, your opinion can change without changing you are as a person. Do you hear that? Anybody listening?
What are you talking about? That's insane. That's insane. I cannot accept that if I am wrong about one thing, it doesn't change me fundamentally.
Right. It's a really crazy and unique perspective of things, is that maybe you can be wrong about one thing and fundamentally still be the same person. And yet he pulled it off so masterfully 34 years ago.
Well, now I know the movie's Supernatural.
But I mean, you get a really great cast that carries what you can only imagine. That when Mancini went to who is this? Is this New Line? Or whoever made this movie, when he's selling this, MGM. MGM, yeah. So it's he goes to me, he's like, all right, so my kids got a My Buddy doll, and it's really creepy. And I've got this idea for a movie that, what if it came to life and killed us all? It's yes. Okay, it's the 80s. We're doing a lot of coke right now. Okay, we can maybe run with this. Is it going to be funny? Oh, no, it won't be funny. There is no comedy here, and just the confidence that he must have had to sell this, then to find what just end up being the perfect actors to bring this all to life is an incredible feat. Everybody did exactly what they needed to do. Nobody did any more or any less, and it just all came together wonderfully.
Yeah, absolutely. So this kind of leads us. You mentioned Mancini, right? I want to talk a little bit about the creative team here. So Don Mancini hadn't done much before Child's Play. In fact, if you're looking at his filmography, there's only one other movie called Cellar Dweller before Child's Play. However, Tom Holland is something of a different
Spider-Man
story.
Yeah,
not Spider-Man.
He's a time traveler.
It's the same Tom Holland.
I had this on, and my wife was walking around as the credits were rolling, and she was like, "Tom Holland." And I was like, "It's like what the fuck are you watching, dude?" So, I mean, we have to mention Fright Night, right? I mean,
yeah,
one of the greatest vampire movies of all time. I think this is where he and Chris Sarandon first linked up. I mean, he is nothing short of a giant in the horror realm, and Don Mancini became a giant because of this. So these two guys, I mean, you're talking about very influential people in horror. What do they, as the creative team, bring to the movie, say, versus someone like Tobe Hooper directing this or writing this? Nick?
I think they bring a very cohesive story, one that worked really well. Obviously, they had really good communication, because if they didn't, then you would have wound up with something like I don't know, the Friday the 13th movie. Not right. Friday the 13th, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, where there's the platform where there's two people clashing with each other, and they try to get everything in. These two people were on the same page the whole time. So instead of there being clashing storylines that go throughout the movie, all the storylines just come together, and it all works out, makes sense. I think that is the main thing they brought to the movie, was just being on the same page about everything and finding workarounds for any kind of disagreements that they may have had, because there had to be some.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that when you're looking at kind of what they brought to the screen was an uncompromising vision of of what they were going to do. Like I was reading about this earlier today, and apparently the original cut of the movie was 2 hours long. And Mancini fought to have most of what was left on the cutting room floor was footage of Chucky. Because the studio wanted Chucky to have more on-screen time because, that's who it's built around. But what Mancini wanted was the suspense of him not being on screen all the time. So it was more impactful and more powerful when he was. And I think that just kind of that unflinching ideal of what you want your movie to be. So they went out and they shot this 2-hour version that MGM wanted. And then when they started test screening, they had their hour 27 version too. And so they set out to not only do it the way they wanted to, but to prove why they were right. And I think that that's really cool. Like to not just bend to what the people who are giving you lots of money have to say, but to also not just be, a dick about it. They weren't Stanley Kubrick, where it's my way or the highway. They were like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we do it both ways? And then, we won't say I told you so when our way is better. And that's what they did. And so then when they test screened these, the version that we got was people liked it a lot more for exactly that. It limits Chucky's on-screen time, and it allows these performances by these amazing actors that we just got done talking about to breathe. And it allows them all to explore their characters. And it's not just about being people who are running and screaming from a slasher. Because, one thing that we're never going to talk about when we watch a Friday the 13th movie is like, let's talk about the stellar acting performances by the people that he killed. It's not going to happen. It's like, okay.
Hang on a second. I really do believe that some of those people did want to, in fact, have sex. All right. I do believe that there was some horniness there.
Yeah. And so, we got what we got was just, we got some guys who knew what they wanted. As much as I joke about this being almost like a gag as an idea, you can tell that when they finally started production on day one, they knew exactly what they wanted this movie to be. And I think Nick is absolutely right. I think that they made sure that everybody in the studio was 100% on board with what their vision was. This is something we talk about that has made the Ari Aster films so good, because this is a guy who knows exactly what he wants this movie to become. And yes, this franchise eventually, I'm not even going to use the word devolves. It eventually just evolves into something very different. But it's along for the ride and the joke the whole way. And even as you keep watching them, it never becomes a parody of itself. Jason X, I'm looking at you. that a lot of those things do, because they just evolved and it stayed the same vision even when it became something very different. And that's something noteworthy.
Totally different subject, but I will always come to the defense of Jason X.
I knew you would. That's why I said it.
Is it good? No. Is it entertaining? Yes. Have I seen it more times than I care to share with you all? Yes.
Dude, I will say the same thing about Jason X that I said to you in the group chat today about the Munsters trailer, which I don't know. I may do a live. I may watch again and do like an Instagram live to talk about. But there is a film quality to Jason X that is just, it's perfectly replicated at any porn parody you've ever seen. Like, I don't know if it's quality of film. I don't know if it's some sort of recording speed or what, but Jason X has that porn parody film quality.
Yeah, it looks like a 3 a.m. Sci-Fi Channel
original
movie. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. That I still enjoy it. So I totally agree with everything you guys have said about, you know, a unified vision here. Mancini had an incredible idea. He wrote the fuck out of this story, and I think one of the things that helped is that, you know, when he approached Holland or Holland approached him, I'm not exactly sure how that went, but they were so on board with this idea that they penned the script together. And so when you've got guys that are sitting down and they're saying, okay, let's collaborate on this thing, what you get is a collaboration. It's the whole reason why, fight me here, anything that John Lennon, Paul McCartney, or George Harrison came out with will never, ever equal the Beatles. I mean, I guess
whole greater than the sum of the parts.
Exactly. Yeah, and I guess Ringo did his own thing too, right?
Sure.
But you will never, ever hear me say, "Oh yeah, Paul McCartney and Wings." Fuck the Beatles. That's what I want to listen to. No, man, I'm gonna put on Help. All right. And that's what's going on here. You've got an amazing collaboration. You've got two great minds, and what is on screen is like nothing short of fucking magic. It's that voodoo magic. They captured it on fucking film, and Holland's way of shooting this. And I don't know if it's that these were directions that were written into the script, or this is him on set making these decisions. Maybe they storyboarded this together. I don't know. But he used POV for a purpose.
Yes.
This was
not just
not
because it was a trend.
Right. This is not just replicating what John Carpenter did in Halloween, or going further back, what Bob Clark did in Black Christmas. There's a purpose to this. You're not supposed to know who the killer is when Maggie dies.
Right.
And in fact, I think that there's still a little bit of mystery there when Eddie dies too. Now, after you've seen the movie enough times, you start to realize, okay, well, you know, that's Chucky's sleeve. That's not what it is that Andy was wearing.
Right.
But,
yeah. Cause like when he runs, cause I had that same thought, like when they're showing Maggie and you just see like that streak run behind her, it's shot in such a way where that could have been Andy, like running back behind her. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And the shoes, you know, they have the same exact print on the bottom, you know, and there's so much time that Andy spends alone in front of the television, which is something that was very popular back in the 80s and the 90s. You know, our parents used TV as a babysitter for us. And for the most
built different. My 11-year-old refuses to stay home alone. I'm like, what?
That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah. You guys are going? Can I stay home?
Yeah.
Let me have my Legend of Zelda cereal.
Right.
And my Ninja Turtles reruns, and I'm fucking fine. He watches so much television, and there's this independence that's established from that very first time that we see him, where he's making breakfast not for himself, but for his mom. You know, so it's entirely possible that he would have heard that newscast and said, "Oh, there's a bad guy out there. I got to stop him." Because if he's fucking nuts, then maybe that's what it is. Right.
Yeah.
I love the way that it's shot, where you're never really sure until you're sure. And I think that that's something that that Tom Holland also used in Psycho 2, because he wrote Psycho 2. And
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and there is that sense of is Norman really killing people, or is he not? And I think Holland does that really, really well. And that's used to great effect here. I love the way it's shot. You mentioned jokingly, Nick, the scene where Chucky attacks the detective in his car. That's a really intense scene.
It
and
is.
those camera angles are so tight, almost as tight as the corduroy pants that he's wearing, because the moose knuckle was real. That was like so fucking tense. The editing in here, and I know that's not Holland, that was the editor. I'm not sure what his name is, but obviously your director works with the editor to get that pacing down. Fucking incredible. I don't think that in the hands of any other writer, director, team, we would have had the movie that we have today.
I was terrified for his balls in that scene, by the way.
Yes. Oh my God.
And he actually did get stabbed at one point, I think, because there's one point where the knife goes through and he sits down on it and he goes, "Oh," and it's like a real reaction.
I think that one other thing that we got out of Holland with this, and now knowing that he did Psycho 2, that this makes even more sense. When I think about Holland, I always think about Thinner.
Yeah.
But now knowing that he did Psycho 2, this makes a lot of sense. And with reading about the stuff that got filmed or that got cut, we're given they never allowed this movie to get over the top with the gore or anything like that. Like you were saying, like what's different is if like a Toby Hooper had made this,
right?
They never were in for the shock value of the gore in this. We talked about Tom Savini at the top. Obviously, nobody like him was attached to this because those weren't the types of special effects that we got. Mm-hmm. But for what this movie was presented as, then it made sense for it to not be that gory, So I think that, but then when we did get them, they were so like the melting, when he's in the fire and stuff like that. I mean, that stuff was so good. And you were never just, like inundated with buckets of blood and ridiculous things that made you numb to that by the time things like that were happening. You were always able to appreciate the special effects that you got because they were used impactfully. And so they went for quality over quantity in this. So speaking of special effects, we've gone around it. We've talked about everybody except for really focusing on one gentleman in this movie, and that, of course, is none other than Charles Lee Ray, or Chucky himself. And in one movie, we an icon that absolutely deserves a spot in that pantheon of movie killers was created, and it didn't take multiple movies before you knew who he was. His image, his everything was established here, and it's still going. We were I think it was before we started recording. I was telling Nick, I've heard that the sci-fi Child's Play series, or Chucky or whatever it's called, is really good. And that just came out a year ago. So now we're 34 years in. People still know who Chucky is. So, I mean, just how do you feel about this freshman effort in creating an icon, Dave?
I find that this is the scariest version of Chucky, because kind of like Freddy Krueger, like if you go back to the original Nightmare on Elm Street, like he is fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
You don't get that like really witty, fast talking Freddy until part 2 and really part 3, because
three is when he gets real snarky.
Part 2 he's still really angry. You get a little bit of Chucky's like sadistic sense of humor here, but you really don't get it until part 2. Part 2 also gives you like the absolutely indestructible Chucky with like half his fucking face missing and all that. Like, and the movie's more of a slasher. It kind of evolves, as you said, not devolves, but evolves into something else. But what we have here, this like really angry person who's willing to like kill a child just because. That's fucking terrifying. Like everything that you need, like you have an iconic look, right? Like the fucking fire red hair, those overalls, like there's such an innocence about this doll, and yet you put that warped, almost demonic looking face on him. That first time that he looks at Catherine Hicks, and he's like, "You bitch, I'll fucking kill you." I'm like,
Yes.
holy fuck,
Yeah.
that's so gets
Yes.
you. When his eyes come in, you get that really sunken look, and his mouth just kind of like distends. It's fucking terrifying. It really is, and I do believe that there is some sort of supernatural strength to this thing, as opposed to Blade and Leech Lady and these these fucking stupid puppets from Puppet Master. There is something really intimidating about Chucky. With the puppets from Puppet Master, it's like, yeah, there's strength in numbers, kind of like zombies. But with Chucky, like, you don't fucking need Tiffany. Like, you've got enough with just Chucky. And that is, I think, saying a lot, that a fucking doll can terrify you that much. And this idea that it's not AI or a chip or something that's gone bad. Like, no, man, this is the soul of a fucking serial killer.
Yeah.
A guy who's willing to do anything, doesn't believe in anyone. In fact, the only reason why he believes in voodoo at all is because it can extend his life. And that's it.
Nick?
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. Everything you said was so outstanding. I was paying too much attention. I think you're going to have to come back to me.
All right. Well, I mean, I think the one thing, that can't be overlooked when you're talking about this is that voice. Like that the
Brad Dourif.
Yes, thank you. I was like, I couldn't find it. I was like, Ed Gross. No, that's the friendly Chucky. Yes.
Yeah.
That voice, that laugh, just like the mania that is so perfectly portrayed in everything that he says. Like just that maniacal scream that he has. Like, it's so primitive and guttural.
Yeah.
And that's you're right in just the look and that the hair and all of that mattering so much. But man, that's the moment when he makes that turn and the face changes and everything, that voice change, like from just like the robotic, "Hi, I'm Chucky," like when his voice becomes what we know as the Chucky voice. It's like, that's what haunts you, right? It's that sound of when he's talking that's so great. And I think it's in 2. There's a really great moment where he's like, "Hi, my name is Chuck Tommy," or something like that. It's like, oh God, it's so good. Like, but just that, because before we're 100% sure that he's alive when the batteries drop out of the box and stuff like that, there is a creepiness to that voice, but it's just because it's associated with the 80s animatronic face that is horrifying. I love the Rock of Fire explosion, but I'd be a fool to not say I've had nightmares about them. But it's, but you get, when you get that change, then you beg for the comfort of like 80s animatronic voice, because it's
give me Teddy Ruxpin, give me Teddy Ruxpin.
Exactly. It's just, it's so terrifying. And the idea of this child's doll being just so foul-mouthed. And you're right. And it's not, like what they did now, where it's like a chip that learns and it's AI and all this. It's like, no, this is like a serial killer with bodies under his belt.
Right.
Like, like this is a guy who was even more terrifying before he was in this doll. And so for that to carry through, it's a really, really interesting, look into how to make something scary. You make Freddy scary with the claw and that he's in your dreams and he can do anything. Jason is scary because he's just a walking tank. Kind of the same thing with the Shape, right? Like, these guys are just undefeatable. so to take something that should just be like, hey, get out of here, and you kick it, right? like to make it something scary that you genuinely believe is taking down these grown ass people. That's impressive.
And he's a legit actor. Like Brad Dourif, for those that only know him from the Chucky franchise, I mean, he won a Golden Globe for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You know, he's an Oscar-nominated actor.
He's Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings.
He's Wormtongue, yeah. You know, this is a guy who's got like provenance. You know, he's not just, you know, some guy who, you know, like, no offense to like fucking Kane Hodder or anyone like that, you know, but he's not just a horror guy, you know, because I know that means something to most people. Oh yeah, it's a horror movie, or he's a horror actor or something, you know. Scream queens, you know, they don't
Johnny Depp, he'll never be anybody.
Right, you know. But that's he's when you have someone like him who already had been nominated for an Oscar anchoring your film, and he is the bad guy. Like there's no question about it. You know, like it's as much as James Earl Jones is Darth Vader. You know, how many people can remember David Prowse's name? You know, maybe, you know, diehard Star Wars fans, but the casual Star Wars fan is not going to know. You know, but everyone knows who James Earl Jones is, right? And you might not recognize the name Brad Dourif, but you know his fucking face because everyone's seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So, fuck, man, he's so excellent in this, and you're right, he makes it scary with his voice alone, because he goes from that like somewhat sweet voice that we hear, like not the animatronic voice, his voice when he's calmer and talking to Andy.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, that, hey, Andy, you know, that thing that he does, you know, and then when he just goes fucking psycho, holy shit, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
So you mentioned earlier about his kills being purposeful or whatever. So all of them are, except for the Dr. Death kill. That one was just, that's where he really reveals how sadistic he is. You know, he got the information he wanted, and then he stabbed him anyway and killed him. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have any qualm with Dr. Death, really, the guy that showed him how to have eternal life. So I think that part really shows how sadistic Charles Lee Ray really is in his character, and that he's willing to do nothing. Also, his negotiating skills are terrible. At the end, when he's trying to get into the room and he's like stabbing through the door, and he's like, just give me the kid and I'll let you all live or whatever. I'm like, I'm talking to this kid's mom. She's not just going to open the door. All right, you can have Andy.
Okay. We'll head out now. Andy, It's been nice.
Yep. See you later.
It's a lot of fun because like we keep reference. I mean, I've watched all these movies, and they're all great in their own way. You know, like we keep saying, it didn't devolve. It evolved into something very different. So it is nice to occasionally go back and see like those straight up really horrifying beginnings of Chucky, as opposed to, you know, like like in those later films, Chucky can booby trap some shit like nobody's business. Like, I forget which one it is, but there's one where he like rigs the airbag with a bunch of nails and then crashes the car, and like the nails shoot into like this guy's face and stuff. Like he eventually, like, again, just an evolution of being a really sadistic serial killer. But, you know, once he kind of came into his own with like, well, this is me now. You know, like, and he had to get creative. They did a great job with that, but it's really cool to occasionally go back and be like, wow, this really started off as just like a horrifying man in a doll's body, not just a sadistic doll that kills people.
Yeah. And that leaves us with our rating, because I think we've pretty much touched upon everything. So Nick, you impressed us last time with your rating. what are you gonna use as your metric for rating Child's Play?
I think I'm going to go with pairs of good guy PJ sneakers.
Yes, I
yes.
like
Yes.
it. These are good guy PJ sneakers.
When I saw that, it just stuck out. I had to do it. So yeah.
Boy. All right. So Nick, out of a possible 5, and it's 5 pairs, right? It's not 5. So it's not like
pairs.
it's not like you've got 2 pair and
Yeah.
then like an odd sneaker out.
Yeah,
right?
no, it's 5 pairs. Yeah.
Right. So out of 5 possible pairs of good guy PJ sneakers, that's a mouthful. How many pairs of good guy PJ sneakers do you give this?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to go with 5 pairs of flour coated good guy PJ sneakers because I haven't seen this movie since I was 4, and watching it now, I was still very impressed with the story. I was immersed with it. The special effects were really good. Animatronics on the doll, the facial features changing just so rapidly from something somewhat cute to absolutely demonic. The explosion on that building where he sets the gas fire. I mean,
that was just the special effects guys like, hey.
The burning doll running through the
building.
The burning doll running through the apartment, just setting furniture on fire. I got to give it 5 pairs. I have to. I can't, even though I'm scarred for life by it, and just seeing that doll makes my skin crawl. I can't give it anything less than 5.
All right. Daniel, what about you?
One of my favorite things about this show is our establishment that we only rate a movie against itself, right? Because we do look at so many different things. And when I look at just this movie, it's easy to want to rank it lower when I start comparing it to some other things. But I don't have to do that right now. And so because I don't have to compare it to anything else, because I can just look at this movie for what it is in story, for what it is in amazing special effects, for what it is in still being scary. Now that I'm 39 years old, it's a 5, man. This is 5 pairs of good guy PJ sneakers. It's still scary. The special effects are still very, very good. That voice is still haunting. I mean, like it's well written. I mean, it's easy to look at "this is the end, my friend," line and be like, it's kind of corny, but when a kid delivers it and then throws a match at a burning doll to kill it, like, that's dope. I can't shit on that line because the way it's presented, like if a grown ass man had said that, I'd be like, that was stupid. But for this 6-year-old to do it, it fits, right? Like it's like it suddenly becomes something not corny. And it's like, what a clever ass little kid, And so it's because I am not comparing it to anything else, and I'm just looking at what I was given here. Yeah, man, this one's a 5 all day.
I would put that before the kill line up there with the best of them.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah.
You're terminated fucker. Blow off some steam, Bennett. I mean, it's right up there with the best of them. I also am going to give this 5 pairs of good guy PJ sneakers, which the only time I have ever heard of PJ sneakers is in this movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I always forget that they're PJ sneakers because he gets into bed with his mom and I'm like, what the fuck is this kid doing wearing shoes in bed?
PJ sneakers.
Yeah, well, that's it. They're PJ sneakers. So that explains it. Yeah, I mean, this movie's perfect. I will say it is not my favorite in the Child's Play franchise. Child's Play 2 is my favorite. And it is not as scary as this one. It does not have the magic of Holland in here. But that said, I really like funny Chucky. and I like that it leans into the slasher and all that stuff. And I mean, everything that happens in that fucking circus or wherever it is that they end up is just fucking outstanding. So no, it's the factory. The circus is the third one. That's fucking crazy. Yeah, I mean this is the circus one. Yeah. It's fucking, I mean, it's nuts. Nothing about this movie makes sense if you look at it as like just parts. You break it down in parts, this movie makes absolutely no sense. And then you put it all together and somehow you have this phenomenal fucking movie that at 34 years old still fucking scares me. Like that's insane. And that all of this comes from an idea that was started on an episode of The Twilight Zone. The Talkie Tina episode of The Twilight Zone, which Mancini has credited. He said, I love that idea, you know. But fuck, you took a germ of an idea and you turned this thing, like that one-celled amoeba, you turned it into a fucking grizzly bear that will maul you to death. It's fucking awesome, and I love it.
Well, I mean, and that perspective is the same thing I had a couple weeks ago when we did Alien, right? Like, I gold starred Alien, but I like Aliens more than Alien. But I'd be a fool to think that it's a better movie. I just like, like you said, you liked it too as a slasher. I liked it too. Aliens is an action film, so it's that same type of thing.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
One thing about this movie that just had a really nostalgic moment to me was actually at the very beginning, whenever he's watching the cartoons and he's going to make the breakfast and he grabs the cereal box and pours it into the bowl. And there's like a little green toy that like topples into the bowl.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that's right. There used to be toys in cereal boxes sometimes.
Yeah. In fact, sometimes you'd buy the shit cereal because it had a good toy that came with it.
Dude, I'll never forget one time I made my parents get me a box of peanut butter Captain Crunch. Ugh. But because it claimed that it came with a boomerang, and I thought that was just gonna be like the dopest thing ever. So
I was duped once because it was it the chocolate Fruit Loops? I think it was.
Yes.
Yeah,
the
and
cocoa fruit.
Yeah, and I was like, that's fucking garbage. If you want chocolate, I mean, you're gonna go Cocoa Pebbles, right? So and I get this fucking like garbage cereal. Like, I don't even like Fruit Loops to begin with, but like the chocolate fucking just serve me fucking cardboard, Anyway, there was a special Stormtrooper action figure that you could that was supposed to be included, and I was all fucking excited about it because I like at that point I'd had just about all of the Star Wars action figures, and this was a special one because I think you could remove the helmet and Luke Skywalker was underneath. And it was either Luke or Han, or maybe it was like a 50-50 chance of getting one of them. And I was really excited, and I fucking poured out the entire thing. There's no fucking there's not one in there. And I look at my mom and I'm like, where's the toy? And then she was like, did you not read the box? I'm like, no, I didn't fucking read the box. I saw the Stormtrooper on it. She's like, you got to mail away for this. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's mail away. She was like, no, I just bought you a box of cereal that you're not going to fucking eat. I'm not spending more money to mail away for this shit. I was like, no.
You remember the ones where you had to get like 5 boxes of the cereal and like save the tops or like the UPCs?
And proof of purchase.
Like, the proof of purchase. They'd be like, you had to like the 5 proofs of
fucking
purchase. But so there it is.
Consumerism at its worst.
A unanimous 5 on Child's Play.
Yep.
And a unanimous hate of consumerism. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
For coming on for suggesting this one. This was a lot of fun to watch, man. You have been a great guest now twice, and we really appreciate that. Is there anything you need to promote here at the end?
I'm
How's your project going?
Yeah, I'm part of a game jam this weekend. And what a game jam is you have a specified amount of time to make a game. And then you that goes up against everybody else that's making games, and then whoever wins. It's nothing. It's just exposure, really. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have 48 hours from noon on Friday to make a game, And I don't know the theme yet. I won't know until tomorrow when the Game Jam is released. But it's the GMTK Game Jam, and the website is itch.io. So after Sunday, if you want to go check it out, hopefully I'll have something, unless life gets in the way, because there's been some things. But hopefully I'll have something for everybody to at least check out. I can't guarantee you it'll be good, especially with 48 hours, but hopefully it'll fit the theme and it'll be playable. But yeah, that's the plan. And then you can, of course, go on there, itch.io, and check out all of the different games that are coming out for this one specific Game Jam if you wanted to.
Excellent. Itch,
not a
like
sponsor.
itch.
Yeah, itch.io.
Okay.
Not a sponsor, of course.
Right.
No sponsors.
Well, I didn't run this by you, Dave. So just bear with me. But I do need to take a second, especially since I've got Nick here. And we get to do this every week, and I get to hang out with Dave every week, and I'm happy to have Nick on here. And Nick and I have been friends for a long time. I just without just going into a ton of really depressing details, Nick and I have had I lost a friend just yesterday to a horrible accident, and he was our age, so it's really jarring, it's really shocking. So if nothing else, I want to just take the fact that there may be somebody listening to just remind you that just because you're our age or even younger, don't always just figure that you've got tomorrow to say what's up to your friends or tell them you love them or anything like that. Yeah. Like, make sure you just take the time to appreciate who you've got, because I think, like I said, I'm 39 now. I still kind of get in that mindset that I've got plenty of time to, people are going to be around forever type thing. And it's a really stark reminder sometimes that they're not. So if you take nothing else away from this episode, take a second for a friend you haven't talked to in a little while, text them, say what's up, remind them that you love them, that type of thing, because unfortunately tomorrow's not guaranteed for anybody. And I know that kind of brings it down, but I've just got to say that. That's what's really been affecting my train of thoughts. So. Yeah.
Is there some sort of collection or a GoFundMe or something for the family?
Nothing that's been announced yet.
Yeah, we don't have any announcements.
So,
well, yeah, stay in touch with our social media, because if there is, we'll be putting it up there. Because it's very tragic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, like I said, that brings it down a little bit, but I think if nothing else, it's an important reminder. Dave did throw the reminder out there to follow us on social media. We are at ShiverPod on all of your social media sites. Our Instagram's been dead for a week. I took a break from social media for the most part so I could enjoy the time with my family while I was in Florida. It's back now. It's alive. It's active. Like I said, Dave and I watched the Monsters trailer today, and we've got thoughts. I may go live tomorrow to talk about the Monsters trailer. So if you're watching and you want to give that a view and then see what we've got to say about the Monsters trailer, going to try to find some time to come up with some new stuff for our social media. We are on all of those things at ShiverPod.
There you go. So on behalf of all of us here on Shiver, fright you very much.